let's start with some quick introductions, but let's start at this end, Alexia, so that you can get your breath back, Sylvia. Just a quick.
So my name is Alexia. I'm working at PwC since I think something over 7.5 years already now. And it was my first job. I'm still there and based in the Munich office.
Great, Marcia.
Hi, I'm Marcia Sles, in real estate for more than 25 years and have been from the beginning, I wouldn't say fight, but emphasize the role of women in real estate, which changed a lot since I started.
Yes, Sylvia.
Sylwia Ziemacka. I represent in the panel the Shared Care Foundation, but I also work here with the Senior Housing and Healthcare Association, and I also work in the publishing business, so more from the communication and public relations background.
That's great. Let's pick up with you, Alexia, just in terms, we heard a little bit from Sebastian around what's happening in terms of young leaders, but also a critical part of that is also adding diversity, equity, inclusion into that mix for PwC. So I guess, what are the strategies there that you're employing?
So, of course, as a global corporate entity, we are doing since more years, but we focus since, let's say, the last 2 years, especially on diversity, equity and inclusion. So we have different initiatives, either, let's say, for women and specifically, or for LGBTQ related matters, of course. We've focused on these matters, let's say, in the past couple of years, and such initiatives, for example, like Shine, which was launched in the UK, they help to build within the company a business network, to actually focus on these matters, and this doesn't mean that the whole company has a unique strategy, but in different countries, in different teams working on these matters, they actually evolve different, let's say, trainings or initiations, or have different events to actually focus on these matters, and probably also help the whole company and all of us as employees to actually see new things, getting to know what actually diversity, equity and inclusion means, and also bring it to our everyday life within the company.
Okay, good. Marcia, you mentioned there in the introduction that you'd been in the industry for a long time and had seen considerable changes. So I think it's quite interesting just to put that into some kind of perspective. Where was it then and where is it now, I suppose?
Yeah. At that time, I think when you had an event in real estate, either an exhibition or meetings, most of the times I was the only woman and perhaps a few others, and that was it. Then, of course, during those years, you saw the change, more females coming into the real estate business. And I think the important thing was that we brought a new touch to the real estate business, because I do believe that women have a certain, well, let's call it gift, capability, to smooth things over, to make introductions perhaps a little more smooth. On the other hand, I think we are much more to the point. So I think Sylvia's laughing, so she knows exactly what I mean. So the balance in that really changed. And now we see, of course, more women in the industry, although I always say, I make the remark that for me personally, it's still a matter of the right person at the right position. And I think that there was, let's say, the last 10 years, there was a little bit of a sort of imbalance, because women wanted to work, but they didn't want to work full time. They expected the company to take care of childcare, etc. And then I always say, you can't have it all. You also have to make a choice, and your choice has implications. Now, that is the major change I saw in all those years. That, of course, I'm very happy that I see more women also running around here. But be realistic, in your expectations.
I mean, that's interesting, because there's been quite a change in terms of the, I suppose, the views, particularly through the pandemic, about work-life balance, but also actually the practicality that you can maybe now have a bit more all than you used to be able to. What's your perspective, Sylvia?
Yes, of course, diversity is much broader topic than just about engaging women, but definitely this is quite a big topic in all of the industries nowadays. And the Share the Care Foundation that I represent is actually focused on this part, especially on the gender equality, because I see a lot of movements around corporate world, definitely, of course, about implementing different solutions like certifications to things that address pay gap and all those things, how many women are in among board members and so on. But this is everything very needed. But at the end of the day, if we ask where does those inequalities comes from, it's also the answer is unfortunately quite obvious. It's something called by the economists motherhood penalty, because women. Yes, and that's something that we have for a very long time. And this is actually something addressed by the EU Commission. And the EU Commission this year, actually all the member states shall implement something called Work-Life Balance Directive. And exactly to activate women, to give them more equal chances on the labor market, they are encouraging the governments from the member states to implement the directive. So it will be additional 2 months of parental leaves for fathers. Yeah, because if we look at the men and women, they are quite equal. And this, if you take out the researchers, till the moment when the children comes up, and then it turns out that when you are sharing, the traditional family is that men are responsible for earning money, and women are responsible for taking care of the child. But the fact is not when the kids are only small, but this stays forever, yes, because when woman is with a kid full time, when the kid is small, then of course she's much more advanced in doing everything around kids. So then when even kid is 3-year-old, 4-year-old, then of course if anything happens to the kid is sick, mom stays with the kid, and so on and so on. This inequality stays for a very long time. So now we have a EU directive which shall be implemented shortly in most of the member states. But what we also know that it's not a social experiment. When we take a look at the Nordics, they have such a policy since 20 years. Iceland is, for example, wonderful example of such a country. They started such a social policy in 2000. And now we know that if you take a look on the salaries of women and men, if you take a look on the work-life balance for both parents, so it doesn't mean that woman works half-time and men works like 12 hours per day because they have to earn the family, and so on and so on. It's really something that is making a big change, and also at the end of the day, children benefits from that.
And that's interesting because actually the first time I went to Poland, which is where you're from, Sylvia, so that's why I mention it, that it was very noticeable to me the amount of women who were working in the real estate sector in comparison to what I would see in London or in Germany, for example. And there was a big difference there, which was interesting to see. Alexia, maybe coming to you, for those interested in the current issue of impact, there's some research that was done by, I think it was around 10 of the associations, so INREV, but also ULI, ANREV, which was a global piece of research which looked at inclusion in the industry because the associations had looked at it, and there was nothing for Europe. There wasn't any data, but there was in the US and there was in Asia, and so everybody then clubbed together to be able to come up with this. And it was very obvious that, for example, in Europe, we are very, very good on carbon neutrality, on the environmental side, but much, much further behind the US in terms of the social side, social inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The encouraging thing I thought was that measuring it is the way to be able to change it, because next year you'll be able to see whether or not there is a change, and it will focus people's minds. But are you seeing anything? Obviously, PwC, very big global brand. Are you seeing different things coming from the US? And how important do you think that is, the measurement side, to be able to actually create change?
I mean, if you're looking at data, which we love, of course we can measure it. So as you said, that will that will actually help us to see the development over the years, of course. But as you mentioned as well, it hasn't been done in the past, so it's something that is starting very recently or in recent years. So the US is way further in that matter, and I think that is a good example actually that Europe, Germany should follow on to actually measure this data. Have, I don't know, questionnaires or also maybe a real estate industry initiative that can actually measure those things that will help us to actually see not just the data, how well we're doing, but also maybe getting the feedback from people who are actually helping on these questionnaires, for example, to get this data, to actually see where we lack also on initiatives or what we should do. These people for sure have also ideas how we could be better prepared and what we should do actually in the future to help not just women, as we said, but also the whole inclusion matter to be more of focus and what should help us also in the everyday business. That is, I think, from my side, very important.
Yeah, and I just think that actually with this ESG, yes, actually the diversity in inclusion is a part of S, and as far as I know, there will be more and more initiatives to, because E is kind of, we know the factors, the indicators. Of course, it's still on the way, but it's not. It's much more defined, yes. The social impact is not really defined, and I know that at least, for example, I'm based in Poland, so I know that in Poland, United Nations Global Compact organization is working together with the Warsaw Stock Exchange to actually define the S, and matters of diversity and inclusion are being addressed. So this is one, but of course there is also corporate level, yes. As far as I know, to be successful and not just putting some big ideas in place. You need to have KPIs. So I know that at least on the Polish market, so the companies that are successful, they need to match some of the big ideas or right things to do and connect them with the KPIs, yes, and then it works, yes. So when we talk about diversity, when we talk about the number of women on the labor market, when we talk about pay gap, if it's all addressed on the level of KPIs, then it's starting to become a part of the strategy, and then the change is actually possible. If it's only like talking and some policies put in the place through the internal communication through HR department, that's not really something that will work at the end.
Okay, good. Marcia, feel free to pick up that.
I was thinking when I hear Alexia and Sylvia, I think also that it might vary from country to country. Even when we talk about Europe, indeed, I have a client in my investment company who is Polish, and there you see exactly what you are telling us now, share with us. On the other hand, in other European countries, I see that this is sort of a topic, but not really addressed. What we heard yesterday, especially also, where we talk about ESG, somebody said like ESG is a buzz, but does it really, lead to something? Is it effective? Is everybody who's saying, yes, I'm ESG aware and blah, 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 do the companies really pick up on ESG?
Is it just a box ticking
exercise? Or it's just a box to tick,
yeah.
yes, we are ESG compliant, so to say. And I think if we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's also, I really believe that it varies from country to country. I think Poland really is one of the strongest countries, in fact, on this subject, like the US, which are running before us. But if I look in the Netherlands, it's something which is an initiative for quite some years now. But to say honestly, yes, we're there, no. A lot of talk, even on the political level, a lot of directives and sometimes a little bit of legislation. But still, it's not in the heart of, let's say, the economic sector. I see a little bit the same in Germany. In the UK, it's quite, So I think it also is really country related. Even in Europe, there are really big differences, which you have to address. But you also have to be realistic. What can you do to, if you make state KPIs in this term? Yeah, that's always good, because I'm a very big fan of KPIs in general. But because we deal with humans, sometimes, you have to move around in a different way than when you do in business life, so to say.
Yeah, but, earlier we had the young professionals panels, and apparently, some of the policies that we implement today, they will serve the future generation. And if you take around all the Europe, because Share the Care Foundation actually is a part of the bigger family COFAS Europe, which means that we have contact with all the European countries. And actually the fact that first we will face the challenges on the labor market in terms of the shortage of workers in general because of the demographics, that's one. Second is also the fact that the needs of the younger generation are completely different. So probably if we take a look on the men who have their kids already now, they are just probably maybe in the traditional way, maybe they aspire to be more partnerships, models of the family, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's men who should earn because they earn more and we have the round circle. But on the other hand, when you talk to the young men who are like now 25, 30, they see their role in the family completely differently. So, for example, this policy, even with sharing parental leave, we know that actually men expect this, yes, and they also want to have, balances. It means that also they want to encourage women to think seriously about earning money, yes, because it's not only that these are two sides of the same coin. We expect men to be more engaged as fathers, but then if you, for example, at least in Poland, I saw such a research when you ask about challenges you see as young parents. So number one, usually at moms and dads list is the health of the child, yes. But then number second, on men's list is, will I be able to earn money for the family? And such a position is not at all on the women's list. So I think that's also kind of, tackling both topics. If we want to be equal, that means both.
I would just like to add on that I think, though, also relating to the first panel with the young leaders, that the topics we're just discussing now, diversity and inclusion, it is very important that they are more in the focus also of the whole industry. Definitely, yes. But I think also on the other side that actually younger people, the new generations, are actually also looking at that way more in a more natural way. It's already there without KPIs having to be measured, without all the initiatives that have to be done. I have the feeling, at least, that they are not just for the gender question, but for all the other diversity issues, either being cultural, ethnic, whatever, that they are more open-minded, so that it's more natural to them to actually live this diversity directly without having all these initiatives around them to actually direct them to that.
It's a very good point, because I think I'm older than you, for sure. And I don't mind. No, but it's true. I think that what I see very prominently is that the generation now really has a different point of view on diversity, inclusion as a natural way of thinking. For us, it's still, we have to be aware. We have to, constantly be aware. Okay, this is another generation, they're younger, you have different expectations, working, life balance is different than when I started working. So very good point that indeed for the young generation, some things are already natural. So and that helps, I think.
Marcia, obviously working internationally plainly, but also based out of Holland, in the Netherlands. So, and the Netherlands, obviously, the perception of that is very much that it's LGBTQ friendly, very diverse. A lot of those things regulated in the government. So, is the real estate sector, because you were saying that that's changed quite a lot, but there's still quite a long way to go. Do you think the real estate sector is still behind other sectors? Because it'll be interesting to see whether or not that begins to be a challenge then for employees to come into it.
Good question. I think if we specifically talk about the Netherlands, I think, yes, we're not there yet. If I compare it to, for instance, the banking sector, the financial sector in the Netherlands, I think is way ahead on the general real estate sector. So yes, indeed, it's still different in the Netherlands, and that's why I said, to Sylvia, yes, in Poland it's very clear, that they are really far further on in the process than the Netherlands, at least in my opinion and in my experience when we talk about real estate. And of course, because I do other things also, I work a lot with financial institutions. So I can see the difference.
So you're seeing the difference between the sectors. And Alexa, is that going to be a challenge for this sector, particularly in terms of attracting the types of young leaders who may then be less interested in this if they can't see themselves represented in the industry currently?
It could be a challenge, but at least from my, let's say, more personal point of view, I would say that that we are getting better on that. So it will be also easier, let's say, in the future to attract also new talent, which is crucial for every company. But there's definitely also more to do, or what we can do to actually become better on that. And as I said, I think it will become easier and also faster. The development will become faster to actually get there in the next few years, and also hopefully being able to attract more new talents. But I think many industries actually have this challenge and have to deal with it right now to actually being able to get in the future also the new talents that we need.
And do you think there's a sort of element, I mean, plainly, we're working from the media side, running 70, 80 events a year, full programs of events, but also covering, you know, the news, but also research, insight, strategy, those kinds of things. Do you think there's an onus on news businesses, media businesses, to be actively pushing these sides? Because the interesting thing is we are actively pushing these things, but actually there's less support coming back from companies. Often companies will always put up, oh yes, here is our spokesman, or here is, and you have to really push to say, well, that's interesting, but is there somebody else? Because, you know, a fresh voice, a different perspective. And so I wonder, you know, what role should the media be playing? And you can be as brutal as you like. I'm ready for it.
I mean, I hope that, let's say, that there are also more women, or I don't know, not just women, but more diverse, let's say, people, just the men that you just said, that will come up to your panels, as we see now, or to any other related matters, and that you don't have to push for that to actually in the future ask and require that new face to come up, but that it will be there already. And I think, at least at PwC, we have that change slightly. So I see it in the last couple of years that I've been asked, or a colleague of mine have been asked to actually join as fresh faces this media side, not just the partner who is there for already 20 years. So I think it's getting there already, and that also within the companies and also at our company, that it's happening already in that change, to be honest. So you could push a bit, but I think it's coming more naturally as well.
So I would say that the role is significant, absolutely, in terms of the media, and starting from events where, for example, in Poland, we already observed the trend that, for example, even it's not even the media that wants to invite as a panelist, you know, diverse panelists, but it's also, I know situations where, for example, from the financial sector, when somebody, the board of the bank refused to be in the panel because there was no woman, yes? So it works from both ways, and I think it's something to pay attention to, because of course, you know, I think always the change requires some resources, in time resources. So if you are a journalist and you have, you know, portfolio of your contacts done through ages, and mostly men, because in the past were men, it's much easier to send a text message, please give me a comment, yes? And maybe looking for a woman that could make a comment will be additional effort, but I think this effort is necessary. But I would also say something from the other side, which is my observation in Poland, that women love to be presented in media, but they usually talk about women in the industry. So I started to say, okay, but cannot you just give me a comment on the financial sector, on the real estate sector, on the logistics sector as an expert? Because then you cluster yourself actually in the, you know, in the place where you just talk about women in this industry. Yes? So I think that, you know, if you want to play a significant role, then you just have to speak up also as an expert.
Share your knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe just one thing also for the companies, which in terms of the real estate industry, and that was one of my interesting interviews with one of the women that is actually a CEO of one of the real estate companies in Poland. And when we finished the official part, she said, but you know what, do you know why actually women are not that well represented in the real estate industry on the top level? Because all the deals are done on most of them, a lot of them are done that are attached to the, you know, dinners in the night, parties in the night, a lot of this stuff. And, you know, which woman, especially that becomes a mother, can afford it? And then I had the same discussion with a man, and I asked a guy about this, and he said, and do you think we like to go on these dinners and on these parties? But it's just the perception on the market that employers think that, men are always available employees 24-hour, and if you have to go on the dinner at 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock over the weekend, you just do it, yes? So I think that the change will come with the generation, but I think it's actually something to address. And the companies don't have to wait for the regulations to change it.
So do you think that is a generational change then, that actually, that the expectation from young leaders coming through is that actually work is 9 till 5 or whatever it might be, and that therefore deals should then be done in that office time? You're not going to be going out for dinner, you're not going to be doing...
Especially that offices now play a completely different role. There is much more space in the company where you can actually arrange spaces for the breakfast, for the meetings, yes, because, of the remote working. So I think, everything is in place to make the change.
Yeah, I definitely say that the younger generation has done that shift already. Not just diversity and inclusion, but as we also mention all the time, home office, work-life balance, they are requesting it every day. So it changed already. Also, I see it with being not that long in that industry, that it changed to my first years actually, where it was still more strict what work-life balance means, what hours, what diversity meant. It changed already within the last 5-6 years. So definitely the younger generation will actually have a different view on that and make it more natural, as we said, also regarding diversity.
It's interesting what Sylvia mentioned about the perception, because when you talk about the interview you had with a woman and then talked to a guy afterwards, then you see, okay.
None of them is interested.
None of them is, yeah, exactly, which is strange, of course. And coming back to your question, Richard, if the media, plays a role in this process, I do believe it, because again, what Sylvia says, in my opinion, my personal opinion, it should not be that because you are a woman, you are asked for your opinion. No, it's because you have the knowledge of the market and your brains to say something about what you're doing. On the other hand, I think that I personally see media should be neutral. So, I mean, if there's something, a specific topic you have and you think, oh, this is really something I have to discuss, for instance, with one woman in industry and 2 guys with it, it's your prerogative, I think.
No, I mean, I think
who are we to, sort of judge? Because otherwise you wouldn't be a neutral resource of information to share with the whole market.
I'm going to come back on that in a second. Sebastian wanted to just come back in here. Sebastian, are you going to tell us that actually you really love the dinners and the...
To be honest, actually I do, yes. but also it doesn't mean that it has to be only the men who go to the dinners. You still can have the dinners, and you still can have... I think, Alexia, you're a pretty good example for that. When we had an event on Monday on the Oktoberfest, it then means maybe if the wife goes to the event, then just the man has to take the family part and bring the kids to bed, etc. And maybe to give you another example, I have 3 girls at home, and my wife is also working part-time. And of course it means that, she says, I'm also working for a bank, I also have business trips. We just have to communicate and to organize when she has a business trip. Then maybe it is my part to stay at home and to bring the kids in bed as well. And I think it's less a corporate topic, it's more a family topic on how you agree what the roles should be within the family. But if you say, my wife loves to spend time with the kids, but then she says, 3-4 times in the year where she has a business trip, we have to find a way that she can do her business and it's still the family is organized. And I think this is a way where it will shift more and more, also with the new generation, that there will be opportunities to bring work-life, family balance together, but not with, let's say, the classical view of a family where the man is working and earning the money, but where both agree on what should be the roles be. And my perception is that still women would like to have more time with the family than men, so it's still let's say, evolving in a way. Yeah? But if you find a way there and you agreed, then there should be a way to arrange it with the job as well, and that your employer gives you the opportunity to then like set it up in a way that you agreed in a family. Of course, what you said, it then depends on like you can't have it all. You have to do choices, but within, let's say, a framework, it should then be possible to do these choices.
I'm good. While we've got the microphone where it is, does anybody else have any views? It'd be interesting to get other people's perspectives just on how they see this, particularly if you're new in the industry or not new in the industry, how you've seen that, whether you're seeing it changes, and whether or not you see something being reflected to you in terms of what you're seeing. Is anybody feeling brave enough to give their view? Do you want? Be interesting to get what you're being pointed at here. So. It'd be good to get your. Do you have a perspective on this? Anything that you want to share? Let's do it. Let's have a chat.
No, I actually agree with everything what it has been said here, so I don't have probably anything else to add. I have to agree with Sylvia that it sometimes is quite interesting to see the perceptions of both sides, because it's not maybe the fact that men don't want to help the women to advance in their careers, but maybe they are not aware of any obstacles or something. So I think it's primarily about communication between everybody, not only between men and women, but older and younger generation and any other diverse.
Great. Does anybody else want to pick up anything? Sure. Well, you can come back in later if you like. But that's an interesting point actually as well, that diversity is not just about gender. Obviously it's also then about sexuality, it's about race and ethnicity, but it's also actually about age and disability. Disability is the wrong word actually, isn't it? It's about but accessibility to the industry generally. I mean, it's noticeable that in a lot of the events that you go to, they are not accessible if you have a wheelchair, for example. I mean, they're really not for a lot of the real estate events that I go to. And so you don't see that visibility. There's no visibility there at all. Interesting, I mean, if you look around here, I know there's been discussions at Expo Real about, okay, I'm not going to be on a panel if there's not some diversity represented here at all. And then the view coming back, which is, well, yes, but we don't want, we don't want tokenism, which of course nobody wants tokenism because that doesn't help anybody. Yes, go ahead. I knew there would be something. I knew you were waiting.
No, I have something to say about the disability comments.
Yeah.
So, my sister really wants to work. She has a handicap. She lives in Spain though, so maybe the rules and regulations work differently there. But the problem is that I think it has to also come from up top, because the government says that when you employ someone with a handicap, it's almost impossible to fire them, which should be positive. It's really, really difficult. You really have to then mess up big time. So they don't really. So what happens to my sister is everybody always has her for the first 3 months, and then right when it gets to the stage of signing